Hi boys and girls, today we're going to talk about borrowing when subtracting with fractions. What that means is taking a whole number and subtracting a fraction. You can see I have a whole number here and I have no fraction here, but I'm subtracting a fraction from this whole number. So since I don't have a fraction here from which to subtract, I've got to borrow from my whole number in order to be able to subtract this fraction. It sounds tricky, but we actually already know the steps to complete this. We just have to put them together. So I want to take a step back and remind you about how a whole number can be shown as a fraction. So you can see here that I've got 1 equals 2 halves, 1 equals 3/3, 1 equals 4/4, 5/5, 6/6, and 7/7, and so on. This could keep going. Each of these improper fractions is one whole. Well, we know that 3/4 is part of one whole. It's a case where 4 parts makes up a whole, and 3 parts out of that is being subtracted from the whole. We need to borrow from our 1, and in order to do that, we have to turn our 1 into an improper fraction. So the first step is to cross out our 1, and because we're working with fourths, I'm going to turn this 1 into 4/4. So the first step is to turn your whole number into an improper fraction. Now we have 4/4 minus 3/4. You can see that I now have a subtraction problem that I can work with. We have common denominators, we have a fraction here that is greater than the fraction here, and so we can easily subtract this from this. So 4/4 minus 3/4 equals 1/4. This may seem kind of tricky to you, but I want to simplify this and let you know that it's really not that much different than subtracting with borrowing with whole numbers. So if you take this problem, for example, 215 minus 27. In order to complete this problem, I have to borrow. I can't do 5 minus 7 in the ones place, so I have to come over to the tens place and borrow. And because that's a 1, I've got to turn this into a 0. I'm borrowing 10 from here, and I'm going to put my 10 here. Just like I did up here, I borrowed from my whole, made it a part of a whole, or turned it into a part of a whole, and then I subtracted. So I borrowed from my tens place, brought my 1 over here, and now I've got 15 minus 7. And 15 minus 7, of course, is 8. Now again, I have 0 minus 2, and I can't do that, so I'm going to borrow from over here, and then I'm going to put my 10 over here. Well, 10 minus 2 is 8, and of course 1 minus 0 is 1. So I have 188. Now, you've been doing this for quite some time. You know how to borrow from the next place over. Borrowing with fractions is the exact same thing. Let's do a little bit more practice just to make sure we really understand. I've already started this problem here. I had 1 minus 2/9. I didn't have a fraction up here to subtract from, so I turned my 1 into 9/9. And then I wrote an equal sign. I wrote my 9/9 here and my 2/9 here, just so I could keep everything in an easy column to keep organized. Okay, so now I can do 9 minus 2, and that equals 7, and of course I have the denominator of 9. Okay, I'd like you to pause the video, and I'd like you to do this problem right here for practice, and then I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer and walk you through it to make sure you did it correctly. So you should have gotten 3/4 for your answer. And what that should look like is you cross out your 1, and since you're working with fourths, you turn your 1 into 4/4. Put your equal sign, make sure you've got everything lined up in a new column, so you have 4/4 minus 1/4, and that equals 3/4. And again, I forgot to do this over here, but if you would circle your answer, that really helps clear up any confusion about what your answer is. Ready for your practice? I would like you to do 1 minus 5/9 and 1 minus 2/5. I want you to make sure you borrow from your 1, make an equivalent fraction with a common denominator, and then make your columns and subtract. So it should look something like this. subtract parentheses with your new improper fraction that you're borrowing from. Make your new column over here with your equal signs, and then do your subtraction. And don't forget to circle your answer.